Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. So the title of this talk tonight is "The World We Know is Possible: Cultivating Peace and Compassionate Action." So I want to begin with gratitude and acknowledgements. Gratitude, of course, to Roshi Joan, and congratulations and happy birthday, Plum Village style. And I'm seeing my dear friends, Manchin and Chuck, and so good to see you both. I also want to thank Kodo and Dinan, who have been such wonderful stewards of this place. And of course, this place would not exist without the residents and the community with you. So this is a very, very special place. And to the folks who are online, thank you for being here. For those of us who may be in Europe, I understand that you celebrated today the moon passing over the sun. So a total eclipse, a very special and auspicious day today. So yes, this talk will touch on the teachings of Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh and socially engaged Buddhism. So this year, Thich Nhat Hanh would be 100 years young. And surely these are times that are made for his teachings. So since I'm on gratitude, I want to thank the entire Mahasangha, the monastic and the lay community. Deep gratitude to the spiritual, the ancestral, the cultural influences that have shaped me, the human and the more than human world. And I want to acknowledge the ancient Asian roots of Buddhism, something that sometimes gets forgotten when we talk about Buddhism. And necessarily, I want to acknowledge the Vietnamese people who have helped to manifest Thich Nhat Hanh. So I want to express cultural humility and express cultural complexity. There is a lot that I do not know. And since I'm speaking about culture, I want to acknowledge that I experienced the Dharma through my own ancestry, through my lens as a Quaker, as a Buddhist, and my African American ancestry. My mother who was Cuban, my father who was Jamaican, and I bring this lens into the Dharma, into this talk. So this is the historical dimension. So there's a saying that we teach what we need to learn the most. We teach what we need to learn the most. And so that's another way of saying that I'm not checking in as an expert. I'm on a journey right alongside you. And finally, I want to acknowledge that my feet are touching the ground on the ancestral homelands of several indigenous peoples, the Pueblo people of Tesuque, of the Nambe people, of the San Ildefonso Pueblo, the Tewa people. These are people who survived colonization and much more. And so I want to celebrate their culture, their language, their ancestry, their very ancient ways of knowing and their very ancient ways of being. So in this talk, we are taking a journey toward peace, a journey toward harmony and compassionate action in a time of worldwide crisis. So in this journey, it's really essential to recognize the ongoing interplay between our inner transformation as people of faith and practice and our outward service to bring healing and harmony in the world. And it is by nurturing peacemaking and compassionate action, our bodhicitta vows, that we create the conditions for authentic engagement with the challenges of this world. So Thay's teaching, Thich Nhat Hanh Thay, reminds us that true change begins within ourselves, yet finds its fullest expression in how we respond to the needs of others. So the structure of this talk is in 3 calls or 3 stories. So the first story is the story of our individual intention, or another way of saying intention is volition. Our volition to live with love, to meet the moment with courage and compassionate action. The second story, or the second call, is our capacity to hold this very tangled moment that we find ourselves without bypass, without collapse, and not to lose sight of love and joy. And then finally, the third call is the third story is what meaningful action can we take now to create the world that we know is possible, to live in harmony with the earth and with each other. So I want to give a shout out to our beloved Rebecca Solnit, who is the writer in residence here. And she will be giving the Measure of Our Humanity talk. I guess, is it August 30th? Okay. And she'll be focusing on possibility. So we'll be continuing that theme. But I want to begin first with the story of our individual life to meet this moment. And I was reminded of this story by a new friend and a Dharma teacher, Devin Berry, in the Insight tradition. And last week, I sat a week-long silent BIPOC retreat in the wilderness of northern New Mexico. And he shared the story, so I'd like to share it with you. On September 23, 1980, Bob Marley, one of the greatest singer-songwriters, the reggae superstar, he walked out on the stage of the Stanley Theater in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with a single acoustic guitar. He sat down and he began to sing a song that has been described not just as a ballad, but as a masterpiece. That song was Redemption Song. Some of you may know it. I see some heads nodding. The song went on to become the last single, the final track of his last album, which is entitled Uprising, which was released 1 year later in 1981, 11 months after his death. So in the summer of 1977, Bob Marley was diagnosed with malignant melanoma under his toenail. His doctors advised that he have the toe amputated. And Marley continued touring. He continued writing. He continued recording. He continued singing. He continued his life's work. And when he stepped out onto that stage in September, yes, he was in severe pain. The cancer had spread to his brain, to his lungs, to his liver. And he had a message. there is a world that is possible, that is emergent. And you and we have the power individually and collectively to create a better world. He sang, and here are the lyrics, you may remember them. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Quoting, of course, the Pan-Africanist Marcus Garvey in his 1937 speech. So this is a story of courage, the courage to meet the moment. And we all in some way have these moments when we are asked to rise and to meet the moment with grace and with presence and with the power of love. So the second story, or the second call, the tangled moment that we individually and we collectively find ourselves in. And so here I'd like to begin with a question and turn the Dharma talk back to you. You didn't know you signed up to give a Dharma talk. You can thank me later. But yeah, so here's the question, or as we Quakers would say, a query, which is a little bit different than a question. What do you love? Not a trick question. What do you love? So just let that wash over you for a moment. Contemplate that. What do you love? Maybe it's your kids, maybe it's the blue sky. Now we have blue sky. Touching grass. Your partner. Does everybody have something that you love? Like shake your head? Yes, you do. Okay. All right. Turn to somebody you don't know very well, or somebody next to you could be, and just share a little bit about what you love. And then I'll just bring you back, like raising my hand like this. Okay, so this is like super short. A couple minutes, not long. Do you have a partner? You could do a threesome. Excuse me? Do you want to share with me? Yeah, please.
So my first instinct was all of it. And then my second, more mundane, I guess, was those tables.
Did you make those?
But there's just something about those tables.
Okay.
It's like, because I sit here for the Dharma talk and I just
Love it.
being in a relationship with those.
Simple.
How about you?
Well, right now I'm loving the blue sky. Right now I'm loving the blue sky. To see the clouds and the blue sky again. It's like, yay. Wow. They're back. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. All right. Shall we gather back? Shall we gather back? So I'd love to hear. Lost control of the Dharma talk. So I would love to hear, I'd love to hear from maybe a few people in the room here about what you love, and maybe a couple people online. Yes, please.
So I was just telling my new friend here. I just drove 500 miles. I was just telling my friend here, my wife and I just drove 500 miles in this truck that had 300,000 miles on it. All these little lights on the dash that said, "You may not make it." But we were together, and someone in the past had told us we would. And it was that freedom in that moment of just knowing it was going to be okay. The freedom of that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Maybe one more? Maybe this side of the room? Please.
I was, is that on? I was sharing how much I love the beauty of nature, and I gave the example of there's a tree here in a playa.
Yeah.
Just as you walk down towards the Zendo. In the morning, it's silent. In the middle of the day, it's the buzzing tree. I call it the buzzing tree because it's just full of bees,
Wow.
loving the blossom. And then the evening time, it's silent. And that sort of thing just amazes me. Just
Beautiful. Kodo, do we have anything from folks online? YouTube? Oh, okay.
YouTube, and then the chaplains are on Zoom,
Gotcha.
so we can just speak a couple out.
Okay. Do you have anything to share?
I love the sound of my 3-year-old niece's laughter and the smirk on her 4-month-old sister's face.
Okay, there you go.
On Zoom, John?
So
That's it.
the second call. As we turn to this tangled moment. So I began traveling and teaching this year in earnest on May 6th. I started in British Columbia, and months later, the fires ensued. Then I was back home in Pennsylvania, and the air was thick with smoke, and the fires from the Ontario, Canada, wildfires, they ensued. And then I went to Plum Village, France, very close to Bordeaux. And for the entire time, there was a heat dome. And then the fires ensued. And now, here in Santa Fe, arriving to the fire and the smoke. So arriving here, I realized that maybe we as a human society are not at the end of the world, but we're at the end of a way of knowing the world. So yes, we are in the midst of a meta-crisis, a polycrisis. This is intersecting. This is on many levels, individual, collective, at scale, systemic, escalating, intertwining, catastrophic, that is, of course, fed by extractive capitalism and our addiction to fossil fuels. We are in a global mental health crisis characterized by anxiety and depression, loneliness, that has given rise to this disease of despair. And of course, social media and the tech boom that has manipulated our attention, perhaps our most important and cherished human capacity. And of course, the moral and ethical implications of AI, the loss of jobs, ecological destruction, rising polarization, the loss of meaning and purpose, a culture of consumption, driven by incentive-based motivations, where we are motivated by fear rather than a kind of moral ambition. So long before I was a Quaker, long before I was a Buddhist, I was a lawyer. And as a lawyer, I was charged to uphold and defend the United States Constitution and the rule of law. And of course, it's shocking to see the rise of authoritarianism and attacks on the rule of law and our system of jurisprudence, and these extrajudicial deportations of undocumented people, and the attack on our civil rights, whether it's the voting rights, the upending of federal regulations regarding climate change, and of course, war, genocide, and displacement. So with that, go back to what it is that is meaningful for you. What do you love? What do you really care about? So I want to acknowledge that, of course, we're anxious. Of course, there's a sense of lack of connection and lack of belonging. Of course, there is grief. These are adaptive and appropriate, and an adaptive response to a mega crisis. And increasingly, people are attending events like this, and they're asking very important questions. How can I be grounded enough in the face of this instability? How can I be hopeful and skillful enough in the face of this kind of volatility and change? And wisely, people are seeking support to address this overwhelm and the sense of helplessness. And we are seeking community and practices that can nurture and transform our capacities for compassionate action. So the third story. What is the meaningful action that we can take now to create the world we know is possible, to live in harmony with the earth and with each other? What is the guidance from this venerable Thich Nhat Hanh and the Plum Village community that can support us now? So Thay's teachings are like a ripple in a pond. Their effects are really nourishing, and they can support us individually and collectively. They ripple outward. So again, on October 11th, Thich Nhat Hanh would turn 100 years old. And his teachings are really made for these times. He has written more than 100 books. He's given countless Dharma talks all over the world. Every book, every talk has the same message. If you read the first book or the 100th book, you're going to get the same message. This is the message. The energy and practice of mindfulness, concentration, and insight helps us to embrace suffering and to calm the mind and the body, to be peace, to create peace, and to be love, and to create love in the world. So in 2014, Thich Nhat Hanh offered a global tour that was entitled The Art of Suffering. Now you think with a title like that, maybe 10 people would have shown up. But there were hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people. And I accompanied Thay and the Sangha. And he gave very specific instructions about how do you handle suffering. And so I want to share those specific instructions with you. So as a member of the Plum Village community, we actually train ourselves to become aware of suffering, to understand, to listen, to embrace it, to know the roots of our own suffering, and then to help others with their suffering. And we begin with the practice of shamatha, stopping. That is followed by vipassana, to look deeply. So we stop, we look deeply to understand. We stop, we feel. This is the opposite of the dominant culture, which offers us distraction, denial, urgency, and false optimism. Perhaps our deepest transformation comes not from walling ourselves off from our suffering, that which is uncomfortable, but to stop, to listen to what the suffering is actually telling us. And when we listen in this way, we can open to a kind of insight, what we truly care about, what we love, what we are willing to defend and protect. So this stopping asks us to have a steady and a tender heart. And this takes immense spiritual and emotional resources to remain open and responsive in the face of the great unraveling. So stopping and staying with the tender and the steady heart is an intervention to the impulse to turn away, to notice patterns, and to act with compassion. So this staying, this stopping, supports letting the reality of suffering be felt without hardening, without collapsing, without bypassing, without gaslighting, or reacting from a premature place rooted in distress. And for me, this capacity is an example and comes from Thai's very famous calligraphy. Maybe you've seen this. This is it. This is it. This is what Thai meant. So injustice, inequity, violence, in all of its many forms are a manifestation, a form of suffering. And mindfulness seeks to alleviate suffering. So to practice mindfulness is to practice alleviating injustice, to seeking an end to violence. And this is the wisdom of interbeing. So this is not a clever play on words. I'm talking about practice. And this is the practice that allows us to handle suffering and to heal. And this is what we'll be doing this coming weekend. So we'll be practicing mindful eating and mindful walking as an expression of love. So as we face the great unraveling, this disruption, this uncertainty, yes, we can calm and we can soothe our nervous system. And yes, that supports our well-being. And to calm ourselves is an indispensable life skill. So this is not just about being regulated as things fall apart, but from a place of calm to take compassionate action, to understand that this is not about victory, meaning I win, you lose, but a justice that uplifts all. For those who live with environmental privilege and those who live in urban heat islands, for the polluters and for the peacemakers alike. So meaningful action begins inside. It begins with our minds. It begins with our way of thinking and our way of seeing. And these mindfulness practices are a path, an expression of love, a journey. They are not a tool to get somewhere, even if that somewhere means that you feel better. So this is not a means to an end. So with the insight of interbeing, we know that our individual practice cannot be separated from the global ethic. This is the path of transformation that supports not only individual transformation, but our collective transformation. And Thich Nhat Hanh has said that ethical Buddhism is very personal and it's very specific. And that begins with our personal suffering in the form of pain and tension in our body, in our mind. We train ourselves to embrace that tension the way we would embrace ourselves and hold ourselves with love or our beloved. And Thai has said to address these issues of global poverty and climate change, we need to begin inside with ourselves first. Because if we haven't dealt with that, we may inadvertently cause more suffering. He said that the Buddha's first teaching on suffering wasn't about global poverty or about global hunger, even though the Buddha cared very deeply about these issues. The first teachings were on cultivating peace within our body and peace within our mind. So we take good care of our suffering to support ourselves in the world. This is the art of suffering. This is transformation. This is insight. This is interbeing. So in an interview with the Buddhist scholar, Joanna Macy, she said that when Thai was interviewed, the interviewer asked, what is the single most important thing that can be done for the sake of life on earth? Wow, talk about pressure. What is the single most important thing that can be done for the sake of life on earth? So his questioner was trying to say, well, should we work in the system? Should we sit on our zafu? Should we climb the barricades? Thai didn't go strategic. He said, what we need most to do is hear within ourselves the sound of the earth crying. We need to hear within ourselves the sound of the earth crying. This is the work of a steady and tender heart. This is the capacity to hold suffering within ourselves and for the earth. This is holding our body and our mind and the earth's body as one. So the struggle for justice is also the struggle for an acknowledgement of the full kinship with the human and the more than human world. So we cultivate and we tend this over time, and we cannot do this alone. So we take refuge in the three jewels. We take refuge in the Buddha, the capacity to awaken. We take refuge in the Sangha, right? The community gathered. We take refuge in the Dharma, the teachings. So in his book, Thai's book, The 5 Spiritual Powers, he named what is needed now in these hard moments. And he named 5 specific spiritual practices that I'd like to share. Faith, confidence and trust on the path of peace, diligence, the consistent and joyful effort, mindfulness, the energy of being fully present, concentration, our ability to focus deeply, and insight, the liberating realization. So to close, 3 stories. The story of a young man raised in abject poverty. He goes on to become an icon, dying of metastatic cancer, and in his last breath, singing a song of redemption. Emancipate yourself. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. The story of escalating and intertwining catastrophes, the suffering in the world, perhaps our deepest transformation to turn toward the suffering and to do so with a tender and a steady heart. And the third story, the third call. What is the meaningful action that we can take now to create the world we know is possible? We can hear within ourselves the sound of the earth crying. We can practice the insight of interbeing. We can take refuge in the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, and we can practice these spiritual powers, faith and diligence and mindfulness and concentration and insight. This is my prayer. Thank you.